I'm Mirriam, and this is Trials and Errors, a show where we demystify the workings of the justice system so that you can fight those Twitter trolls and those Facebook fanatics. Today, we're going to talk about immigration, and specifically the Biden executive order that was just issued on Wednesday. We're going to do it while drinking some Syrian coffee. Come on, let's go. The link to the recipe for the Syrian coffee is in the description below. Why are we drinking Syrian coffee when we're talking about travel bans? Because 4 years ago, Donald Trump signed an executive order prohibiting people from Syria from coming into the country. I was one of the first people to show up at the airport. I went to Dulles because my law partner and fantastic producer and director and editor of these videos said, let's go and do something. It was really hard for me as a Muslim from Kandahar, Afghanistan, who had sworn to uphold this constitution, who felt very American in just about every single way, to think that this country hated her and didn't want her here. I really don't want to look back because we're not going that way. But I think it's important to kind of get an overview of how we ended up where we are today when it comes to immigration. When Barack Obama was elected in 2008, immigration activists had this amazing hope that perhaps we would get real immigration reform. And there was a lot of lobbying that went on to get that to happen. What was really important at that point was to readjust our goals, our vision for this country, and to really accept the fact that there are a lot of people who are already living here who are undocumented. So we lobbied very hard to get real comprehensive immigration reform. Obama had 2 terms. He had 8 years. And the only things that we got done, partially because there was a lack of political will on the part of Democrats after passing the Affordable Care Act, which took a ton of political capital to get passed. And then because we had the Tea Party and we had Republicans who were just obstructionists. So we didn't get comprehensive immigration reform. What we got was a bunch of executive orders, some of which stood up to constitutional challenges, some of which did not. Move forward, we end up with Donald Trump. And one of the dangers of executive orders, of course, is that these things are done by the sign of a pen. That's it. The president says it, and it happens. Donald Trump had made a campaign promise that he was going to have a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the U.S. because we're all terrorists, right? And he tried to make good on it. And he banned people from coming to the United States from 7 countries, and one of those countries was Syria. I don't like to think about what it felt like to be a Muslim American in 2016 and 2017. And when I think about what it felt like to be a Muslim, I remind myself that there have been groups of people in this nation who have been targeted throughout their entire time in this country. And that I shouldn't feel bad for myself, right? If it started in 2001, right, September 11th, if it started after that, that's still a little short blip in the history of America. But in January of 2017, I felt it. I felt it. Like, you don't want me here. And that was hard. But on Wednesday, Joe Biden fulfilled one of his campaign promises, and that was to lift that racist, terrible, inhuman ban, which prevented families from seeing each other, which prevented people from getting married, which prevented people from coming here to get medical treatment that they couldn't get in their home countries. There were people who had valid visas who couldn't come. But that's done now. What Biden's executive order does is it rescinds the previous executive order, and it puts things back to exactly where they were before Donald Trump signed his executive order. So there's Muslim nations, and then there's also a bunch of African nations. Now, what's interesting about Donald Trump's ban on people from a handful of African nations is that those people could come here on non-immigrant visas, which means they could come as tourists, they could come if they had temporary student visas, they could come here to spend their money. But they could not come here if they wanted to settle. So they couldn't come as permanent residents, whether through a job or through a family member. And that's interesting because what happens if people from Africa come to America? How do Africans who then become Americans generally vote? It was about demographics, and it was about Donald Trump realizing, and the Republicans as a whole realizing, that if they allowed more Muslims to come and settle in this country, if they allowed more Africans to come and settle in this country, that they might not be able to win elections anymore. And let's be honest, after what we've seen over these past several years, and especially after what we've seen over the past couple of weeks, the Trump administration wanted a white nation. Stephen Miller, the architect behind Trump's immigration plan. And honestly, there wasn't really a plan. There was just a series of fear-mongering and hate, Islamophobia. I mean, from Mexicans are rapists to they're not sending their best people to shithole countries. We know very well what they were talking about. Joe Biden's executive order is very clear because he says he's rescinding and revoking racist travel bans. I mean, there's no words being minced in that executive order. And it doesn't try to hide behind national security. It doesn't try to hide behind, oh, we're so afraid of the brown people, they're terrorists. Biden's executive order is just one part of what appears to be a fairly radical, and I mean that in a good way. So I don't mean like radical leftist, like bad radical. It's a fairly radical immigration plan. It does something that I have said that he should do, which is provide amnesty. Now, amnesty is kind of a loaded word, right? It's a loaded word for some people, not for people like me and you. But it provides a pathway to citizenship for people who are already here, who are undocumented. And there are maybe 13 million of them, and they're here. And they work with us, their children go to school with us, they're our friends, they're our neighbors. And Biden's plan includes a plan for them to, one, get their green cards, and then after that, get citizenship. It also provides immediate permanent resident status for Dreamers, which is fantastic. It also does something that I think is super important, and that's to figure out what the issue is, why we have so many migrants coming from Central America, and then creating a foreign policy around helping to fix that, right? Instead of sending them money constantly, trying to figure out a way to make life livable for people in the countries in which they live. I mean, here's a way to keep refugees from coming to America. Stop making them. Syria, Iran, Iraq. These are nations that have been devastated because of what the West has wrought. You know, we'd all like to go home. We'd be okay with that if our homes were safe, if there was a way for us to work and not be afraid of, you know, drones and whatnot. So it's important that the root issues are addressed if you're really concerned about immigration. And you can see the differences between administrations and among administrations, not just in their domestic immigration policy, but also when you talk about their foreign policy. I mean, if you're going to kill people in other countries, then you should expect that some of those people are going to leave that country to go someplace where it's safe. Biden has also said he's going to increase the caps on refugees, which is great. We're pretty excited about that as well. Because honestly, immigrants make America great. We are not just commodities, right? But it's one way of looking at it. I know that the governor of Virginia, for example, loves to talk about where Virginia was as far as its quality of life and its economics 50 years ago or 20 years ago compared to where it is now. And the major difference there is demographics. Who lives in Virginia now? And it's people who look like me. It's black and brown people that live in Virginia. So while we shouldn't just be valued for, I don't know, making better food and introducing it to all of you, better coffee, working hard, all of that sort of good immigrant stuff. That shouldn't be all that we're good for. It should mean something. The latest executive order allows us as Americans to get back to that entire idea that we're a nation of immigrants. This channel is designed to teach you the important parts of the justice system, and those include racial inequality, economic inequality, immigration, and of course, criminal justice. So what I want is to give you the knowledge so that when somebody says something to you about things like the travel ban, when they say, it wasn't a Muslim ban, it wasn't a Muslim ban, you can tell them, in fact, the countries that were initially banned were majority Muslim countries. I want you to know this so that you can be agents for change, so that you can call your reps, so that you can write letters, so that you can write to your newspapers, so that you can talk to your friends and your family. Because all of this matters. And it matters in moving this country forward. And it matters in getting people like Joe Biden elected. Like, hey, he wasn't my first choice. He wasn't. But it was more important for me to make sure that people who were separated from their families, for people who are facing racial inequities, for people who are incarcerated, for all of them to have a chance. I'm really excited about what can happen in the future. I'm so remarkably happy about this executive order that rescinds this terrible ban. I don't know if you can tell when I talk about it, it may be a different sort of attitude from when I talk about the ban itself. I'm really hopeful that someone's grandmother, cousin, brother is able to come and make Syrian coffee for them when they come here to visit their family after 4 really long years. If you like this video, please subscribe, because the way you get us into the YouTube algorithm is by watching the videos and subscribing to the channel. And I'm gonna just say that we get a lot of views, I mean a lot for a brand new channel, but we don't have a lot of subscribers compared to the number of people that stop by and take all of our good information. Hey, a couple more things. In case you're interested about what happened in 2017, we've got a few links to some stories in the description below, and I just did an interview on WAMU, our local NPR affiliate, and that's linked below too. Bye, thanks. Don't like, because that's just nasty. Hit the bell notification, and really what I honestly love is your comments. Tell me what you want to learn about, what part of the justice system really intrigues you, and we'll do a video on it. Thanks again. Bye.